Welcome to Lotus Heart Teachings, where we explore the deeper wisdom of life, spirituality, and mindfulness. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the noise and chaos of the world, you're not alone. In a time where we're constantly bombarded with information, distractions, and endless chatter, it can be easy to forget the power of something so simple, yet profound: silence. In today's video, we're diving into a truly transformative practice from Buddhist teachings: 7 situations where silence is powerful. These aren't just ordinary moments of quiet. They are crucial, life-changing opportunities where silence can guide us toward greater clarity, peace, and understanding. Have you ever found yourself caught in someone else's anger, unsure of how to respond? Or perhaps you've been in the middle of a stressful situation and felt the urge to talk it out, only to realize it only made things worse. What if I told you that silence could be your greatest ally in these moments? That's right. When you embrace the stillness in certain situations, you can transform not only your experience, but also how you interact with the world around you. From the power of silence in the face of anger, where it becomes a shield to protect you and others from escalating conflict, to finding peace and clarity when witnessing suffering, silence can be a profound tool for personal growth and emotional resilience. Silence allows us to step away from the chaos, reflect on what truly matters, and respond with intention rather than reaction. But why does silence hold such incredible power? What makes it so transformative? Why is it, at times, more effective than speaking or reacting? In this video, we will uncover these secrets and explore how silence can help us navigate difficult emotions, build stronger relationships, and create inner peace in our lives. Whether you're looking for tools to enhance your mindfulness practice, seeking a deeper connection with yourself, or simply wanting to understand the hidden power of silence, you're in the right place. Stick around as we explore the 6 situations where silence is powerful and learn how you can use silence as a source of strength, wisdom, and peace. Trust me, this is a journey you don't want to miss. Anger is one of the most intense and potentially destructive emotions we experience. It clouds our judgment, often distorting our perspective and influencing our actions in ways we later regret. It's easy to get swept up in the moment and react impulsively when we're angry, but Buddhist teachings offer a different approach, an approach that encourages silence as a powerful tool for handling anger mindfully and effectively. By choosing silence in the face of anger, we create an invaluable space to reflect and understand the true source of our emotions, rather than simply reacting to them. At its core, Buddhism teaches that anger arises from attachment, aversion, and ignorance. When we are attached to our desires or expectations, and something or someone disrupts that attachment, anger is often the immediate response. Similarly, when we are averse to certain situations or people, anger may flare up as a defense mechanism. This reaction, while natural, can lead to damage, both to ourselves and to those around us. It's in these moments that silence becomes our ally, offering a break between the stimulus and our reaction. Buddhist philosophy uses the metaphor of the 2 arrows to explain how anger works. The first arrow represents the initial pain or discomfort we feel when something troubling happens, perhaps a harsh comment from a colleague or a disagreement with a friend. This is the inevitable suffering of life, something we cannot avoid. The second arrow, however, is the suffering we add to that initial pain through our reaction, our anger, harsh words, or rash actions. The second arrow is optional, and it's in our power to avoid it. When we remain silent in the face of anger, we give ourselves the opportunity to pause before we react. Silence allows us to distance ourselves from the immediate emotional impulse, creating space to reflect. Why am I angry? What is triggering me? What am I attached to or afraid of? This moment of self-reflection helps us see the anger for what it is, an emotional response based on our perceptions and attachments, not an objective truth. By choosing silence, we avoid reacting impulsively, preventing the escalation of the situation and the subsequent harm that could result. Consider Nelson Mandela, a figure renowned for his calm and measured responses to immense adversity. During his years as a political prisoner and throughout his presidency in South Africa, Mandela was faced with profound challenges that could easily have stirred anger. However, he often chose silence in the face of hatred and injustice. Mandela understood that a well-placed silence could be more powerful than words, giving him the space to reflect before responding and preventing impulsive reactions that might escalate conflict. For example, Mandela's decision to engage in talks with his oppressors, despite being imprisoned for decades, was rooted in a deep understanding of silence's power. Rather than retaliating with anger or seeking revenge, he used silence to step back from the situation, to analyze and reflect on what his response could achieve in the long term. This approach was pivotal in facilitating peace in post-apartheid South Africa. Mandela's ability to remain composed in the face of adversity teaches us the value of silence, not as a passive response, but as an active and intentional choice. Buddhism views silence not as passivity, but as a deliberate, active choice. It's not about ignoring our feelings or pretending they don't exist, but about choosing how to engage with them. When we are angry, silence helps us take a step back and observe the emotion without immediately acting on it. Through silence, we can cultivate mindfulness, a key aspect of the Buddhist path, and in doing so, we give ourselves the opportunity to examine our anger more deeply. For example, we might ask ourselves questions like, what does my anger reveal about me? Is this anger based on a true injustice, or is it tied to my expectations or perceptions? This self-inquiry can lead to profound insights, such as realizing that our anger often stems from unrealistic expectations or misunderstandings, rather than objective wrongs. By understanding the root causes of our anger, we become better equipped to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. From my own experience, I've learned that silence in moments of anger can lead to a much more peaceful and productive outcome. For instance, during a recent heated debate with a close friend, I felt the urge to respond immediately, defending my point of view. However, remembering the Buddhist teaching on silence, I decided to hold back, take a few deep breaths, and give myself a moment of reflection. What I realized in that pause was that the conflict was fueled more by miscommunication and assumptions on both sides, rather than any fundamental disagreement. Had I responded impulsively, it would have likely escalated the situation. Instead, after taking that moment of silence, I was able to express my feelings calmly, which ultimately led to a more productive and compassionate conversation. In Buddhism, mindfulness is central to transforming our relationship with emotions. Mindful silence in the face of anger allows us to process our emotions in a healthy way, preventing them from controlling our actions. Silence gives us the space to acknowledge our anger without judgment, letting us observe it as it arises and passes away. It's important to remember that silence does not mean shutting down or denying our emotions. Rather, it's about allowing them to flow through us without being hijacked by them. When we respond to anger with silence, we shift from reacting out of habit to responding with intention. This is a profound shift that can transform our relationships and our internal world. Instead of allowing anger to dictate our actions, we create a moment of space that allows for deeper understanding and more constructive responses. In summary, silence in moments of anger is a practice that can help us avoid unnecessary suffering, both for ourselves and for those around us. Through silence, we can transform our anger from a destructive force into an opportunity for reflection and growth. By choosing silence, we give ourselves the space to examine the roots of our anger, gain insight into our attachments and aversions, and ultimately respond with wisdom and compassion. Just as leaders like Nelson Mandela have shown, the ability to remain silent in moments of anger is not only a sign of emotional control, it's a powerful tool for navigating life's challenges with clarity and grace. By cultivating this practice of silence, we can not only reduce the harm caused by our own reactivity, but also create more peaceful, mindful interactions with those around us. Silence, in this context, is not about avoiding conflict or suppressing emotions. It is about engaging with them in a way that fosters understanding, compassion, and peace. Gossip and slander are toxic practices that, over time, can erode relationships, damage reputations, and create unnecessary division within communities. These behaviors often arise from deep-rooted insecurities, jealousy, or a desire to feel superior by tearing others down. However, Buddhism offers a unique perspective on handling such situations through the power of silence. In Buddhist teachings, silence in the face of gossip is seen as an act of compassion and self-restraint. Rather than contributing to the spread of harmful words, choosing to remain silent can be a profound way to foster peace, protect our own integrity, and encourage others to rethink their actions. Gossip and slander are not simply innocent chatter or passing conversations. They are intentional acts of speaking about others behind their backs in a way that misrepresents the truth, often with the intent to cause harm or diminish someone's reputation. In many ways, gossip is a reflection of negative emotions such as envy, resentment, and fear. Instead of lifting others up, gossip drags them down, sowing distrust and division. The consequences of this behavior can be far-reaching, impacting not only the person being gossiped about, but also the speaker and the listener. Buddhism teaches that right speech is one of the fundamental aspects of ethical living. Right speech involves speaking truthfully, kindly, and in a manner that benefits others. Gossip and slander, by contrast, violate these principles, as they often involve exaggerating or fabricating stories that lead to harm. Engaging in gossip can have a significant negative impact on our karma, as it perpetuates negativity and causes emotional suffering. Furthermore, it contributes to a cycle of falsehoods and misunderstandings, which can leave long-lasting scars on relationships and communities. When we choose to remain silent in the face of gossip, we are actively refusing to participate in the negativity that others may be spreading. Silence, in this case, becomes an act of mindfulness. It allows us to detach from the situation, reflecting on the harmful nature of gossip without adding to it. This moment of silence is not a passive action. It is a conscious choice to disengage and protect our own peace of mind. Take, for example, a prominent figure such as Oprah Winfrey, who has consistently risen above the gossip and slander directed at her throughout her career. Oprah has been the subject of numerous rumors and negative stories in the media, yet she has mastered the art of silence when faced with false accusations and malicious chatter. Instead of responding angrily or defensively, Oprah often chooses silence, focusing instead on her work, her vision, and her personal values. Her ability to ignore or rise above the noise has allowed her to maintain a strong reputation, build meaningful relationships, and continue her impactful work without being distracted by negativity. This is not to say that silence is always easy, especially when the gossip or slander is personal or unjust. However, Oprah's example shows how choosing silence can empower us to retain our dignity and focus on what truly matters, rather than getting caught up in the destructive cycle of gossip. Silence, in this case, serves as a tool for self-preservation and emotional resilience. It allows her to avoid adding fuel to the fire and to continue on her path without getting distracted by petty negativity. Remaining silent during gossip is not about suppressing our emotions or ignoring our values. Instead, it is about creating space for introspection and making a deliberate choice to not engage in harmful conversations. By choosing silence, we not only protect our own peace of mind, but also set an example for others. In a world that often thrives on sensationalism and drama, silence is a powerful act of defiance. It serves as a reminder that we do not condone negativity, and that we believe in the importance of speaking with kindness and integrity. Moreover, when we choose to remain silent, we allow others to reflect on their behavior as well. Often, people engage in gossip because they feel the need to share or bond over the flaws of others. However, when we do not engage, it may prompt the speaker to question their motivations and reconsider their words. Silence can be a subtle but effective way of encouraging others to stop and reflect, potentially leading to a more positive conversation and a shift toward more compassionate speech. In my own life, I have found that silence in the face of gossip is one of the most powerful ways to protect my energy and emotional well-being. For example, I once found myself in a situation where a close acquaintance began speaking ill of another friend. I was tempted to join in, either out of curiosity or a desire to contribute to the conversation. However, remembering the wisdom of silence, I chose to remain quiet. I knew that engaging in the gossip would not serve anyone and would only lead to more negative energy. Afterward, I reflected on the situation and realized that my silence had not only protected my own integrity but also sent a message to those around me about the kind of conversations I was willing to participate in. By remaining silent, I avoided adding to the negativity and chose to uphold a standard of kindness and respect for others. That experience deepened my understanding of how silence can be a powerful tool for maintaining peace and fostering positive relationships. In Buddhism, silence is deeply tied to the concept of right speech and ethical living. By choosing silence in the face of gossip, we align ourselves with the principles of compassion, non-harming, and self-awareness. silence becomes an expression of mindfulness, where we consciously choose not to contribute to the harm caused by negative speech. This practice allows us to cultivate a deeper sense of integrity and self-respect, as we choose to refrain from participating in behaviors that contradict our values. Furthermore, by practicing silence in such situations, we create space for deeper understanding and empathy. We move away from judgment and criticism, recognizing that every person has their own story and struggles. In silence, we acknowledge that we do not know the full picture and that it is not our place to spread or entertain stories that may not be true or fair. In this way, silence becomes a way of honoring the dignity of others and of promoting harmony within our communities. Choosing silence in the face of gossip and slander is a conscious and compassionate decision that can have far-reaching benefits. It allows us to disengage from harmful conversations, protect our own integrity, and encourage a culture of kindness and respect. Silence, in this context, is not about passivity. It is an active choice to stand firm in our values and to create space for positive, mindful communication. Just as influential figures like Oprah Winfrey have demonstrated, silence can be an empowering tool for maintaining peace, building strong relationships, and preserving our sense of self-respect in a world often filled with negativity. Through the practice of silence, we can contribute to a more compassionate and harmonious society, one where right speech and understanding take precedence over gossip and slander. Conflict is an inevitable part of life. Whether it occurs in personal relationships, the workplace, or even on a global scale, disagreement and tension are natural human experiences. What separates constructive conflict from destructive conflict, however, is how we respond to it. In many situations, we instinctively react to conflict with strong emotions, often escalating the situation. However, Buddhism offers us a profound tool for handling conflict more mindfully: silence. Rather than reacting impulsively with anger or defensiveness, choosing silence in the midst of conflict provides us with an opportunity to pause, listen actively, and engage in more meaningful, compassionate communication. Silence during conflict isn't about avoiding the issue at hand or suppressing emotions. It is about creating a mindful pause. In the heat of an argument or disagreement, emotions can cloud our judgment and our ability to think clearly. We may feel the urge to defend ourselves, counterattack, or dominate the conversation. In such moments, silence serves as a powerful tool to prevent us from reacting impulsively. Instead of saying something we might regret, silence allows us to take a step back, breathe, and reflect on the situation. By choosing silence, we create a space for active listening, which is essential in understanding the other person's perspective. Silence offers the opportunity to hear the emotions, thoughts, and reasoning behind the other person's words. This mindfulness practice allows us to absorb the situation fully without being consumed by our own reactions. It's through silence that we can pause our own internal dialogue and give the other person the time to express themselves fully. A notable figure who demonstrated the power of silence during times of conflict is Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi's approach to conflict was rooted in nonviolence, ahimsa, and truth, satya. During India's fight for independence from British colonial rule, Gandhi was often faced with immense tension and opposition, both from the British authorities and within his own country. Rather than escalating the conflict with violent retaliation or heated words, he chose silence and peaceful protests to resolve conflicts and advance his cause. His approach to silence was not one of avoidance, but of mindfulness. Choosing to remain silent in the face of injustice gave him the clarity to respond thoughtfully, rather than react with anger or violence. Gandhi's silence in the face of provocation was a powerful tool in shifting the dynamic of the conflict. His ability to stay calm, even when confronted with physical or verbal abuse, inspired others to follow suit and seek nonviolent methods of resolution. This example highlights how silence can serve as a strategic tool for de-escalating conflict and fostering peaceful dialogue. When we choose silence during conflict, we give ourselves the opportunity to listen with empathy. Often, in the midst of a disagreement, we are so focused on defending our position or proving our point that we forget to consider the feelings and perspectives of the other person. Silence helps us step away from our own ego-driven responses and invites us to listen more attentively. Empathy is a critical component of conflict resolution, and silence allows us to practice it fully. By remaining quiet, We can put ourselves in the other person's shoes and try to understand the motivations and emotions behind their words. This kind of empathetic listening is transformative, as it allows us to engage with the other person's experience without judgment. Silence in conflict fosters compassion, making it easier to respond in ways that acknowledge the other person's feelings and needs. In my personal experience, I found that silence during conflict has often led to better outcomes than speaking immediately. I recall a time when a colleague and I disagreed on a project at work. Both of us were passionate about our perspectives, and tensions were rising quickly. Rather than immediately voicing my objections or trying to convince them that I was right, I decided to remain silent for a moment. I took a deep breath and allowed my colleague to express their point of view fully. As they spoke, I realized that their concerns were not about challenging me personally, but about the quality and direction of the project. That moment of silence allowed me to hear their intentions and respond with a more collaborative mindset. The outcome was a constructive dialogue, where we both felt heard, respected, and understood. By choosing silence, I created the space for empathy to take root and transformed what could have been a heated argument into a meaningful exchange of ideas. Silence allowed me to disengage from my knee-jerk defensive reactions and respond with a sense of calm and compassion, which led to a stronger, more effective partnership. One of the most powerful aspects of silence in conflict is its ability to break the cycle of reactivity. When emotions are high, we often find ourselves caught in a loop of reactivity, responding impulsively to each new statement or gesture, escalating the conflict further. This reactive cycle can quickly spiral out of control, leading to misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and even lasting damage to relationships. Silence, however, interrupts this cycle. It provides a gap in which we can choose how to respond, rather than simply reacting out of anger or frustration. Buddhism teaches that mindfulness, self-awareness, and non-attachment are crucial to overcoming the reactivity that fuels conflict. Silence offers a powerful tool for cultivating these qualities in the midst of disagreement. By pausing, we create space to detach from our emotions and the immediate urge to defend or attack. This gives us the ability to respond with clarity and intention, rather than out of habit or emotional impulse. In conclusion, silence during conflict offers numerous benefits, from fostering empathy and understanding to creating a break in the cycle of reactivity. Whether we are dealing with personal disagreements, workplace tensions, or larger political conflicts, silence provides us with the opportunity to pause, reflect, and respond with mindfulness. The ability to remain silent in moments of conflict is a powerful skill that allows us to engage with the other person's perspective, step away from impulsive reactions, and ultimately resolve disputes with greater wisdom and compassion. By choosing silence in these moments, we open the door to peaceful resolution and deeper understanding, both for ourselves and for those around us. When we encounter the suffering of others, our immediate instinct is often to offer words of comfort or to try to fix the situation. However, Buddhism teaches us that sometimes the most compassionate and effective response is silence. By remaining silent, we allow the other person the space to express their pain freely, without the pressure to console, offer solutions, or diminish their experience. This practice of silence, of offering our presence without words, can be one of the most profound ways to demonstrate respect and compassion for another person's suffering. In Buddhist practice, the concept of right speech teaches that words should be used to benefit others, not to cause harm or create unnecessary tension. Right speech involves using language that is truthful, kind, and meaningful. Yet, there are situations where silence becomes the most appropriate response. When someone is suffering, whether due to the loss of a loved one, a personal failure, or emotional distress, words can sometimes feel hollow or insufficient. In these moments, silence does not represent a lack of compassion, but rather an opportunity to offer our undivided attention, respect, and empathy. Silence, in the face of suffering, allows us to be present with the other person without judgment. It offers them the space they need to process their emotions, express their pain, and ultimately heal. In Buddhist teachings, there is an emphasis on the impermanence of all things, including suffering. By being silent, we acknowledge the temporality of the pain and give the person the dignity to experience it fully, without the burden of trying to escape or fix it prematurely. The act of remaining silent when witnessing someone's suffering is not a passive gesture. It is an active choice to create a safe, non-judgmental space where the person can express their emotions freely. Often, when people are in pain, they may feel overwhelmed by their feelings and unsure of how to express them. Silence offers them the freedom to feel and process their emotions without the fear of being misunderstood or dismissed. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness is central to understanding and managing our emotions. Silence in the face of another's suffering allows us to engage in mindful listening, where we focus completely on the other person's experience, without distraction or immediate reaction. This type of listening fosters a deeper connection between people, helping the suffering individual feel seen, heard, and valued in their pain. In this moment, the presence of another human being, without the imposition of words, can create a profound sense of understanding and compassion. I've personally experienced the healing power of silence when comforting a close friend who is going through a difficult breakup. In the past, I might have rushed to offer advice or tried to make them feel better with words. However, this time, I chose to remain silent, simply sitting beside them as they cried. My silence gave them the room to express their emotions freely, without interruption, and without the expectation of a quick fix. I didn't try to comfort them with phrases like, "it will get better," or "everything happens for a reason." Instead, I allowed them to feel what they were feeling in the moment. What struck me most was how deeply my friend appreciated my presence. It wasn't the words that helped, but the fact that I was there, fully present with them, in their pain. They expressed later how comforting it was to have someone simply sit with them, validating their feelings without rushing to change the situation. That experience reinforced for me the idea that silence can often provide more comfort than words, as it allows space for true emotional expression and healing. Buddhism teaches that suffering is an inevitable part of the human experience, and it arises from the impermanence of all things. Our loved ones, our health, our emotions, everything is temporary, and that includes suffering. When we remain silent in the face of suffering, we are, in a sense, acknowledging the transitory nature of pain. We are giving the person experiencing the suffering the opportunity to fully engage with their emotions, knowing that, like all things, it will eventually pass. Silence, in this context, becomes an act of honoring the impermanence of suffering. It allows the person to sit with their pain, fully experiencing it without the pressure to push it away. In doing so, we also demonstrate our own understanding that suffering is not something to be fixed immediately, but rather something to be accepted, felt, and ultimately released when the time is right. Consider the Dalai Lama, who has spent much of his life in the midst of profound suffering due to the Chinese occupation of Tibet. Despite the suffering of his people, the Dalai Lama is known for his teachings on compassion and inner peace. Rather than focusing on the external situation, he often speaks of cultivating inner stillness through meditation and mindfulness. In his public appearances, the Dalai Lama rarely offers quick fixes or solutions to global problems. Instead, he often encourages people to sit with their pain, acknowledge it, and transform it through compassionate action and meditation. The Dalai Lama's approach to suffering is a reflection of his deep understanding of impermanence. He teaches that suffering, while painful, is not a permanent state, and through mindfulness and compassion, it can eventually be transcended. His presence in the face of global suffering, particularly in his interactions with those affected by war or oppression, is often marked by quiet contemplation and reflection, allowing others to process their grief in their own time. Ultimately, silence in the face of suffering is a profound way to demonstrate compassion and respect for another person's experience. By choosing silence, we create a space for emotional expression, self-reflection, and healing. We also honor the impermanence of suffering, giving the person the opportunity to process their emotions fully and without interruption. Silence is not a form of neglect. It is a powerful tool for healing, offering the comfort of presence without the need for words. In our fast-paced, problem-solving world, we may feel an impulse to always fix things or offer quick solutions. But as Buddhism teaches, sometimes the best response is not to say anything at all. Silence, when offered with compassion, can be the most healing and supportive thing we can provide. It allows others to feel seen, heard, and respected in their pain, creating a deeper connection and a more meaningful response to their suffering. Personal suffering, whether emotional or physical, is an inevitable part of the human experience. Everyone faces hardship at some point in their life. While it's natural to seek comfort and guidance from others during difficult times, sometimes the most powerful form of healing is found in silence. Silence, in this context, serves as a form of self-compassion, a way of processing pain without the need for external validation or advice. It creates a sacred space for us to reflect, gain insights, and ultimately find healing from within. Buddhism teaches that suffering is a natural part of life, and by embracing silence, we acknowledge our pain in a non-judgmental way and create room for emotional growth. When we are experiencing personal suffering, it is easy to feel overwhelmed and tempted to reach out to others for reassurance or solutions. However, the constant search for external validation can sometimes prolong the suffering or even complicate it further. Silence provides an alternative, a space where we can sit with our emotions and process them without the need to distract ourselves with external sources of comfort. This internal reflection is an essential part of healing, as it allows us to connect with our inner selves and gain a deeper understanding of the source of our pain. Buddhism teaches that suffering, while painful, is a universal experience that everyone faces. Rather than avoiding or suppressing pain, the practice of mindfulness encourages us to embrace it fully. By choosing silence, we give ourselves the opportunity to acknowledge the emotions we are feeling without judgment. This non-judgmental awareness of our pain creates a compassionate environment in which we can begin to heal. Silence allows us to sit with our suffering, understanding that it is a transient experience, just like all other emotions. Silence offers us the opportunity to reflect on our suffering in a way that external distractions cannot. When we face personal hardship, it is easy to become consumed by our emotions and lose sight of the bigger picture. Silence creates a safe, quiet space where we can reflect on the nature of our suffering, allowing us to gain deeper insights into ourselves. Through silence, we may come to understand the impermanence of suffering and recognize that the pain we feel is not permanent. Just as happiness and joy are fleeting, so too is suffering. Buddhism emphasizes the impermanence of all things, including suffering. When we embrace silence, we come into direct contact with this fundamental truth. In the quiet moments of self-reflection, we can see that our pain, while intense, is part of the natural ebb and flow of life. By allowing ourselves to experience suffering fully, we can learn to release it more easily, knowing that it is temporary and will eventually pass. I've personally encountered moments where silence became my refuge during difficult times. After a significant personal loss, I initially sought comfort in the company of others, hoping their words would ease my pain. However, after a while, I realized that their well-meaning advice only seemed to prolong my suffering, as I was not ready to hear their suggestions or engage in conversation. Instead, I chose to spend time in silence, away from distractions. I walked alone, meditated, and allowed myself to feel my grief without attempting to push it away. In these moments of solitude, I found clarity. Silence allowed me to process my emotions in a way that was non-judgmental and compassionate. It wasn't about fixing my pain or searching for the right words to make it go away. It was about accepting my emotions and understanding that, like all experiences, they would eventually change. Through this quiet reflection, I gained a deeper appreciation for the impermanence of my suffering and found a sense of peace in knowing that healing was already beginning to take place. By embracing silence in the midst of suffering, we open the door to emotional growth. When we sit with our pain, we are often forced to confront our emotions, fears, and insecurities. This process, while uncomfortable, is essential for healing. Silence allows us to explore the root causes of our suffering without the distractions or external influences that might interfere with our understanding. Through this process of self-exploration, we may gain insights that lead to personal growth. For example, we may discover that our suffering arises from attachment to a particular outcome or expectation. By recognizing this attachment, we can begin to loosen its grip on us, ultimately reducing the suffering it causes. Silence provides the space needed to see these patterns and break free from them. Ultimately, silence during personal suffering is a profound way to honor our emotional experiences. It allows us to acknowledge our pain, reflect on its nature, and understand its temporary nature. Silence is not about avoiding our emotions or pretending they don't exist. Rather, it is about creating space for us to engage with our suffering in a mindful and compassionate way, allowing us to heal at our own pace. In our modern world, where we are often encouraged to seek quick solutions and external validation, silence offers a valuable counterbalance. It allows us to tune out the noise and listen to our own inner voice. By embracing silence, we can transform our suffering into an opportunity for self-compassion, growth, and healing. Just as figures like Abraham Lincoln and Mother Teresa turned to silence to process their pain and deepen their understanding, we too can use silence as a powerful tool for emotional resilience and personal strength. When we experience mental or physical exhaustion, the immediate impulse is often to seek relief through talking, seeking validation, or distracting ourselves with activities. However, Buddhism teaches that silence, especially during moments of stress and fatigue, is not about avoiding or suppressing the situation. Rather, it is an invitation to accept the present moment and engage in deep self-care. Silence, in these times, becomes a powerful tool for introspection and self-reflection, providing an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves and regain balance. Rather than turning outward to others or distractions, silence allows us to focus inward, helping us understand the root causes of our exhaustion. Often, when we're overwhelmed, we don't take the time to analyze why we feel the way we do. Silence helps us create space to listen to our bodies and minds. It gives us permission to pause and process our emotions. This allows us to reflect on whether the fatigue comes from physical exhaustion, emotional stress, or perhaps a sense of imbalance in our lives. Buddhism emphasizes mindfulness, which requires us to fully experience and accept our emotions rather than avoiding them. When we embrace silence in moments of stress, we create room to experience our feelings without judgment. This is not about fixing the exhaustion immediately, but rather about being present with it, recognizing that it is temporary and that we can move through it. Silence in these moments of fatigue is an act of self-compassion. By giving ourselves the time and space to rest in stillness, we recharge both mentally and physically. Personally, I've found that silence is often the most effective way to recover when I'm feeling overwhelmed. There have been times in my life when I've been pushed to the limit, juggling work, responsibilities, and emotional strain. In those moments, I have felt the urge to talk about my struggles or distract myself from them. However, I've learned that silence is a far more powerful remedy. When I take the time to step away from the noise and sit quietly, I allow myself to process my fatigue. I can sit with my feelings and recognize that what I'm going through is temporary, just like everything else in life. This practice of silence helps me gain clarity, allowing me to approach my stress from a place of calm rather than react impulsively or out of frustration. In those quiet moments, I find that I can breathe deeply, reconnect with my body, and mentally reset. It's in this silence that I can reflect on what's causing my exhaustion and recognize patterns that contribute to it. It gives me the chance to understand my emotional state more clearly and take the necessary steps to address it, whether that's by setting boundaries, practicing mindfulness, or simply allowing myself the rest I need. Buddhism teaches that suffering is an inherent part of life, but that doesn't mean we should remain trapped in it. Silence during times of fatigue and stress offers a way to process and accept our emotions, without rushing to fix or escape them. It's about being present with ourselves, allowing us to heal through self-reflection and mindfulness. This practice of silence allows us to slow down and regain a sense of peace, helping us find clarity amidst the noise of daily life. Through silence, we not only give our body the space to rest, but also create a space for emotional healing. It helps us step out of the frantic pace and reconnect with our true selves. By learning to embrace silence during times of stress, we foster a deeper sense of self-awareness, compassion, and resilience. In the stillness, we can find the strength to recover and emerge from our exhaustion with renewed energy and focus. As we've explored today, silence is not just the absence of sound. It is a powerful tool that can transform how we navigate life's complexities. The 7 situations where silence is powerful offer us a profound opportunity to connect with ourselves and others on a deeper level. Whether we're facing anger, stress, the suffering of others, or even our fatigue, choosing silence in these moments isn't about avoidance or passivity. It's about creating space for reflection, compassion, and mindfulness. In the face of someone else's anger, silence becomes a shield that allows us to avoid escalating the situation and provides the other person with the room to reflect and regain composure. When we're exhausted or overwhelmed, silence offers us the opportunity to reconnect with ourselves, to pause and rest, rather than seeking external validation or distractions. And when witnessing suffering, whether our own or others, silence becomes a form of compassionate presence, giving the person space to process their emotions without judgment or the need for immediate solutions. Now, imagine what would happen if we applied these teachings to our own lives. What if we chose silence more often, not just in moments of tension or pain, but as a way to guide us toward deeper understanding and healing? Silence, when used intentionally, has the ability to break patterns of reactivity, foster emotional resilience, and help us approach every situation with greater clarity and compassion. If you found today's insights helpful, I invite you to reflect on the role silence plays in your own life. Are there moments where you can step back, breathe, and allow yourself or others the space to just be? What could happen if we embraced the power of silence more often, with mindfulness and intention? If this video resonates with you, I encourage you to share it with friends, family, or anyone who might benefit from these teachings. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to Lotus Heart Teachings for more spiritual wisdom, mindfulness practices, and insights that can help you live a more peaceful, purposeful life. We're just getting started, and there's so much more to explore on this journey together. So, stay tuned, and let's continue to grow, reflect, and find peace within the silence. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.